Now, our next guest speaker is going to speak to us about something completely different, but just as important. I'm going to introduce you. There we go. Ilean Harris. Now, who's part of the coaching group that was here yesterday? Okay, so for those who are coaches, Ilean is very familiar to you. She coaches the WildFit coaches. So she's an integral part of this community already. And where she comes from in terms of her coaching is that she's a very successful business coach and also a business owner. So someone who's teaching something from really her own experience, but living a life which is not just focused on one thing, but creating a life which is meaningful across all aspects of it. And you know, one of the things I love about Ilean, you guys are familiar with Mind Valley, right? Eric was telling, I think yesterday, about how Mind Valley is probably it's like a 300-person company. It's huge. To create what they create, they have systems upon systems upon systems. Ilean is like a one-woman Mind Valley. And if you're anybody who's in the creative field, or you're a coach, or you're an entrepreneur, you know how difficult it is to have to be every single role yourself, and to keep balance, and to be, you know, a spouse, or a parent, or a friend. And so as all of us are going through these journeys at whatever stage we're at, having a little bit of a chat about how do we do all those things and do them well and be okay with them and not have to sacrifice is a really important part of the transformation. So to speak to us about how we can have it all, please welcome Ilean Harris.
Thank you, Mia. Isn't she amazing? Can we clap for her, please? She's so amazing. Thank you guys for having me. And if you see my picture, that's Bentley, my little dog. And if you remember the stick person we drew, that should give you a hint of whose paper you got. So if you see that picture, hint, hint, you'll know whose paper you have now. And I'm just so thankful to be here. It's such an amazing experience, not just to go through WildFit, but to be at this amazing, beautiful location with like-minded individuals. And I loved Mia's exercise earlier of sharing one tidbit you normally wouldn't on your own. One thing people typically wouldn't know about you. You want me to level the playing field a little bit before I say you can have it all and give you these great tips to do it? Who would want a little insight to one crazy thing WildFit helped me overcome? Anybody a little curious? Because I'd love to level the playing field. Well, I'll tell you this. You're not going to believe it. You're going to think I'm exaggerating a little bit. And some of you might even look at me differently. But I can live with that, right? Anytime any of my clients say, how am I supposed to do that, Ilean? And they actually do, and they're so scared, there's always that question, right? But did you die? So I'm going to put myself in that same position and share with you what I used to eat that now I don't, thanks to WildFit. Any guesses of what it was? Anybody want to shout anything out? Chocolate, donuts, good guesses. What else? Ice cream, Coke. All right. So who's ready for it? Ready? It's a special one. Picture this. You're in Miami. The wind's blowing. You feel a little grumble. You want to eat something quickly, and you go to the kitchen. Do you know what I would reach for? Cheese sticks, and I would dip them in condensed milk. Raise your hand if you think I just leveled the playing field. All right. Well, thanks to WildFit, I'm now eating so healthy. My life is transformed, like I've mentioned to you guys time and time again, and I will never tire of saying this. My worst day after WildFit is still better than my best day before WildFit. I unapologetically endorse this program, send everyone to Eric that I can, and I am just so proud and elated to be here with you guys today to talk to you about something that plagues people nowadays in a day and age of social media, of television, of reality TV, and that is how to have it all. Can you really have it all? Well, if I do this health program, am I going to get to keep my friends too? Well, if I travel the world, how do I keep in touch? Do I miss out? If I quit that job, will I still have friends? There's all these questions, and so anything you ever want, any goal you set, that vision board, does it ever look like a punishment? Secretly, deep down inside? Is there ever some resistance to really going for it because deep down inside you think there's a social cost? and economic cost. I've been there before. Can anyone relate to doing all the right things and it feels so wrong? Something just wasn't right. And well, we're not alone. In fact, we have so much in common that once upon a time, I almost got my aunt put in prison. Awkward. It's okay to sometimes, maybe you bump into someone, you apologize. You maybe shrink a shirt you borrowed, and you apologize. But when you almost get someone into prison, what do you say? Like, awkward. And so this is what happened. I'm a little girl in Miami, and I'm at my dad's house. My dad does car interiors, upholstery. In fact, he did the car interiors to help renovate one of the cars for Fast and the Furious. And so I just grew up around cars and boats and all these amazing other business owners. And one of my dad's top clients, of course, is a used car dealership. They buy a car from an auction, and then he repairs the interior, makes it beautiful. And in addition to other things they do, I'm girly, I'm not going into mechanics, just giving you the general idea. Then they can resell the car. So the title of this car dealership is Barbara Motors, and I'm a little girl, and I was so quiet. You gave me a book, and I was gone wherever that book took me. I really wasn't any trouble. I would travel the world with my books, and I was a little nerdy. I even read encyclopedias. And so, too much TMI with you guys. I'm way too comfortable here. You guys know way too much about me already. And I would sit, and this guy, hey, Ileancita, because that's how you would say it in Spanish. Ileancita, how are you? And they check on me, and I was just so good. They wanted to entertain me. So do you know what this man did? This is before the day and age of identity theft, of maybe even a little common sense. He gave me a box of checks he no longer needed for his car dealership. An entire box of checks. And me being the lady boss from day one, I knew exactly how to write a check. So I sat down with these checks and I said, whoa, the possibilities. So my uncle walks in and I said, how much do you need? And he told me this amount, and as generous as I am, I added a couple zeros. And I wrote it out, and at the time, there's a soap opera about a man who won the lottery, and his name is Huicho Dominguez. So I signed it proudly, Huicho Dominguez. Ripped the check and said, here you go, sir. And as people kept walking in, I kept giving them checks. There was no malicious intent, no idea. I wasn't pranking anyone. The check said Barbara Motors, and I'm a little girl in overalls. So, of course, there's no prank intended. But then walks in my aunt. Little did I know she was my victim. So she walks in, and this time I changed the story a little bit. I don't know why. I was a little girl. My imagination was running away. And she tells me, hey, Ilean, what are you doing? Tia, aunt, Tia, I checked the mail, and you got a letter, but I threw away the envelope. Guess what? You won the lottery. Little background on my aunt. She had been in Miami from Cuba for about 5 days. So she didn't really know how the United States worked. So she says, I won the lottery. Remember, the check says Barbara Motors, signed by Huicho Dominguez. And I'm in overalls, and I'm a little girl, and I add all these zeros in my handwriting, and I get so excited, and I tell her she won the lottery, my first sales job, I guess, and I just sold her on it. She totally believed me. She in no way, shape, or form saw everyone else around the room holding a check. Have you ever been so focused on one thing you zone out of everything else? You just tune out all the possibilities, all the warning signs. Maybe even in your body, you're eating something and you don't really see it. Well, everyone else was holding a check. The check said Barbara Motors, and she just didn't see it. Pretty scary, right? When you think about that implication for our own lives when we're not present and paying attention. Well, she tells her husband, Mira, look, we won the lottery. And so she does what any logical person who just won the lottery would do. She went to the casino and she made it rain that night. She spent every last dime my family gave her to get her life started in the United States. Money for medicine, a car, a home, you name it, it was gone. But they didn't care. Why? Because they just won the lottery. And so the next day, she didn't ask anyone for a ride. She didn't tell any of her brothers. She quietly figured out the bus system in the United States in Miami and got to one of the biggest banks in downtown Miami. She walks into that bank, Cubaned out. She was telling the world, mírame, look at me, I just won the lottery. And she gets to that window, and the lady looks at the check and looks at her, and she tells her again, cash it. I won the lottery. And then, okay, ma'am, congratulations. Please take a seat. She's like, oh, America, so slow. And so she goes and she takes a seat, telling her husband they probably have to go get all this money from a Brinks truck or, whatever she was imagining. And in the meantime, suddenly, helicopters. The lobby's empty. SWAT team. Badges. Hands up. Oh, my goodness. What's happening? Am I safe in this country? Send me back to Cuba, please, somebody. And they walk directly to her. She's looking behind her. They must not be talking to her. She just won the lottery. She didn't have any trouble there. And they asked her, ma'am, are you here for forgery? I don't know. I was a little girl. It was either CIA or FBI. Somebody powerful showed up and scared the bejesus out of my aunt. And they called me, and I confirmed the story, and it matched the handwriting on the check and all the other checks I had handed out that day. And thank goodness I spared her from going to jail, even though I myself was the one who almost sent her into jail. And she came home furious. How could you do that to me? And my family was like, she did that to you, really? Like, you didn't even ask us for a right. Were you even going to share with us? That was what her brothers were saying. Did you not want to cut us in? We just brought you from Cuba. Come on. And so one magical thing happened. Even though she was the laughing stock of the family, of the block, maybe even the police force of Miami, even though I was so afraid to see her, she didn't see me again for another year because I didn't know what would happen. One thing happened that was magical for my aunt. She was free for one night. For one night, she was in a casino, and it was real. It was real. She held that check in her hand, and the next day it was as simple as just go pick out your dream house. No ceiling. For that moment, it was so real to her. She could wear her dream wardrobe. She could travel to her dream destinations. She could help all the people she wanted to help. For a moment, it was real. It wasn't wishful thinking. What would change in our lives if for a moment it was that real? What would change in our health if for a moment it was that real? You got to hold it in your hand for a second, and you fully believed it was yours. Where would we go? Who would we inspire? Who would we be? And for that moment, it was so real to her. So guess what? Out of my dad and my uncles and everyone else, she was the last one to get to the United States. But she was the first one to really make it in business. She was the first one to own her dream home. She was the first one to drive her dream car. She was the first one to really significantly contribute to my grandmother in Cuba. Do you ever feel like you're the last one to the party? Maybe there's other coaches online. Maybe there's other people who are just ripped. They have like a six-pack behind their knees, and you're like, but how? And you just see it on Instagram, and you're just like, how do you do it? Teach me your ways. Will I ever get there? What would change if for a moment it was real to you, that you could hold it? What would change if you believed it with so much certainty? No one could convince you otherwise. Imagine if you weren't sitting there going, what am I supposed to want? And really just honestly tell yourself, this is how I want to live. This is how many clients I want to have. This is how I truly want to contribute to my community. But unfortunately, with very good intentions, really great people in our lives have passed down some information that maybe isn't leading us toward that path. And thankfully for you guys, you don't have to learn it the hard way like my aunt did, right? Yay for avoiding prison today. Instead, we can learn it the easy way. So before we talk about the easy way, let's just review the 3 C's of doing things the old way. This is definitely something you guys want to write down as I get it from my Post-it note. The very first C is complexity. The second C is completeness. And the third C is compartmentalizing. I want to illustrate to you guys first the impact this has. Can everyone quickly stand up? Don't worry, you'll have a chance to write these down. Just quickly stand up. I'm going to help you feel the old way for a moment. Now, please participate as much as you feel comfortable, okay? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a health guru. So participate to the best of your ability. So you're standing there and you feel okay, right? Maybe even a little island breeze. And what if you suddenly just bend your knees just a tad? Cool, that's good. So you don't pass out. You don't always want to lock your knees. But then life tells you don't fully stand up. You can't have it all. So you got to bend a little bit more. So part of you is like, girl, let's stand up or let's just sit back down. But what are we doing here? Just floating. So you're like, I'm just going to aim to sit down a little bit. So a little bit more, just holding it. Some people, maybe it's burning a little. Maybe you go a little lower, but you're not quite sitting. And you just hold it. And you just enjoy the stretch, the pull. Maybe after a while it starts feeling normal. You find a way to get comfortable. You shift your weight. But maybe you go a little lower. And you don't quite sit down. But the chair's so close and tempting. What if I just back up a little bit? And she won't know. The chair's kind of balancing me. But no, I will know. Life will know. And what if, a little bit lower, you almost feel like you passed the chair. Ay, Ilean, Dios mío, what are you doing to us? And your knees shake a little bit. That's not fun, right? We can stand back up, right? That's what we're doing when we settle, guys. Sit back down. Take a seat. Great job, guys. That's what we're doing when we implement these 3 C's in our lives. Complexity. How are you complicating your goals? Well, I would inspire more people. I would consistently have my alkagizer. I would do X, Y, and Z if there was a different president. If my neighbors would just move out. That noise is killing my meditation time. What are we really complicating? Completeness. That's another word for perfectionist. Any perfectionist in here? Yeah, I can relate to that. Not to every area of my life, but there are some things where we have this crazy expectation that things have to be perfect before we do something. That we have to know everything before we take one step. And the third is the scariest one, and that's compartmentalizing. That's the scariest one. What if you're super awesome at work, which was happening to me? Thank you, Jesus, being super awesome at work. But I was really struggling in my health. Was I holding myself back or what? What good was financial success if I didn't have health? I can go get another website. I surely can't get another body. But then if you can go just focus on your health, but you don't contribute. When was the last time you volunteered? Read a book? What are other areas in your life where you're kind of holding that squat and you're miserable and it hurts, but you're not taking those steps? But thankfully, there's 3 C's that'll help you cure this. And this can happen in any area of your life, guys. This is applicable to any area. The next 3 C's are contribution, capacity, and communication. You guys got those? Contribution, capacity, and communication. And these are the new C's. Contribution. When was the last time you volunteered? Maybe gave some awesome solicited advice. Maybe just helped someone. Hey, I'll babysit your kids. Go on a date night. Contribution. Anytime I have done mission work, and I'm not telling you guys to do mission work, I'm just speaking from my experience. Anytime I've worked with thousands of orphans or helped do anything, I promise you I went with the best of intentions of changing their life. And 110% of the time, they changed mine. Contribution will serve you more than anything combined ever could. Second, it's capacity. Have you ever noticed that you walk into the gym, and because you walked in, the weights don't truly change because you're there? When I walk into the gym, there's a 2-pound weight, a 5-pound weight. There's hundreds of pounds, things I don't even worry myself with. They just look really heavy. That doesn't change. You know what changes? My capacity. So sometimes in life, for you to have it all, For you to say, I either want to stand in my power or I want to sit or however, I'm tired of that really uncomfortable squat, all you have to do is increase your capacity. Stop compartmentalizing and saying, well, if things were better here, then I would do that. Don't give conditions to your happiness. You can be happy at any point in any time. For me, my capacity, I grew up the daughter of immigrants, blue-collared household. They didn't speak English. My capacity expanded via books, via personal development. My capacity expanded via travel. For some people, maybe they grow up very well off and they already understand travel, they understand finances. Maybe their capacity has to expand via contribution. Everyone's story is different, but everyone can expand their capacity. Your capacity will expand your growth. Now, the third C is communication. The quality of your life will be decided based on the quality of your communication. I know everyone is here from all over the world. I love international communities, and that's so amazing. But we're a little familiar with the US dollar, right? So everyone has seen maybe at one point or online a $1 bill. Maybe you've also noticed a penny. If you don't talk to anyone who knows anything about the currency and you ask them to choose between 1 cent, a penny, or a $1 bill, they might actually go for the penny because of the copper. But because of what the dollar has communicated, even a $100 bill, someone who has been exposed to that communication will always prefer the $1 or the $100 bill over the penny. Isn't that interesting? Now, we compare ourselves to someone and say they have 1 million followers, or they have a six-pack behind their knees, or, they've done this, or they're married to that person, or they're driving that, and we start getting into our heads instead of communicating to the world the amazingness you have to offer. Your story matters. Your life matters. Your struggle wasn't there just for random reasons. You were born for a purpose, and anything that you can think, any entrepreneurial instinct, any creative idea that you have, if you truly put your mind and resources to it, why not you too? Isn't that freeing just to know that it's possible, even if you don't want to do it in the next 5 minutes, even if it's a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal? Isn't it amazing that sometimes a communication really just starts with ourselves? How many of you talk to yourselves like I do? Those of you who didn't raise your hand, you're talking to yourselves right now. I don't talk to myself. You did it right now. When you talk to yourself, think, how can I increase my contribution? How can I increase my capacity so that when I walk into the gym, I'm not looking at the little weights, the gym of life, right? No judgment, if you don't want to lift. I'm saying the gym of life, can you handle more? I'll give you an easy example. My husband and I were both entrepreneurs, and when he's on a conference call, he can be in the shower. I don't know where he is, but if I have a jar that won't open, I will tap him on the shoulder, and he'll just open it. No conversation needed. If he sees the jar, he will open it for me. Yesterday, Eric was talking, and I tapped him in the shoulder, and I pointed to the spider. Didn't interrupt him at all. He removed the spider from my life, and he kept going because they have the capacity to handle it. And those obviously sound like really obvious, simple examples. But maybe somebody says something you don't fully like on social media, and it derails your entire day. Or maybe you anticipate something happening, that 10-year, 20-year high school reunion, just the anticipation of it, the communication you're giving yourself is really making it worse in the actual event. Wouldn't it be powerful if we took ownership of our contribution, of committing to consistently increasing our capacity? The increments don't matter. It's the commitment to constantly being stronger and focus on what we're communicating to the world. Have you ever seen those people that are just magnets? Why do clients just keep finding them? Why do they keep getting job offers? Oh my goodness, this girl, she's just at home watching Netflix, and like 20 guys want to be her boyfriend. And you're saying, how does she even meet them? And you're wondering, but many of us are not looking at what they're communicating. So whatever your goal is, think, how can I contribute more? How can I add value? How can I increase my capacity? How can I change the world? And how can I better communicate to myself, my self-worth, my goals to stay focused? How can I better communicate to others what it is? When I was on my WildFit journey, I so wanted to just tell the world and be evangelical, but thankfully, I knew that just wasn't going to work. So I would just quietly make my alkagizer, and my husband would say, "What are you having there?" And I tell him, "That's not for you. Don't worry about it. That's for me. That's just some awesome thing I'm doing in Eric's program." And he's like, "No, I should have awesome things too." And you know what? Next thing you know, next is cauliflower rice. "Oh, I made you that rice. That's for you." This is kind of what I'm eating. "Why are you eating that? Why isn't that on my plate?" And he always had the option. But do you know why he trusted me? Because of other ways I've contributed to him. If I had a long history of either saying nothing or just steering him the wrong way, do you think he would have cared if I said, "This isn't for you"? He probably would have said, "Oh, thanks. Thanks for sparing me this time." But instead, because of that contribution, and because he knows I'm increasing my capacity this time in health, he's heard the communication that this may also help him. Now, it's just a small example in my home. We could be here for days and looking at ways in history that this has helped people. But for you right now, just know this, that the best way that you can help people sometimes is by helping yourself. So I'll close with this. There was a journalist, and he wanted to interview Walt Disney. Walt Disney, unfortunately, was on his deathbed. And he really wanted to talk to him, and he finally was led in the room. Can you imagine what a difficult conversation that would be? What do you say to someone when they're at that point? But he was objective, and he wanted to be a journalist, and he wanted to get this information. So he goes to Walt Disney, and he just couldn't hear him. You know that pose? It just wasn't working. That, what did you say again? So he actually got in the bed with him so he could hear him closely. What a commitment, right? Not both on his part, but also on Walt Disney's. So Walt Disney tells him, lying in bed, "And this is where the roller coaster is going to be. And this is where my employees will bring their families." And he really painted this whole picture. And the journalist was able to record it all. And unfortunately, we all know Walt Disney passed away. But then that journalist went to his funeral. He also was there for the grand opening of the first Disney park. And people walked up to him because they knew he had conducted that last interview. And then, you know what happened? They told him, "Don't you wish you would have been here to see it? Don't you wish you could have seen this all come together?" And guess what the journalist told everyone? "We're here because he saw it." Of course he saw it. We are here because of his vision. So what are you envisioning right now for your communities, for your family, for the people around you, and most importantly, for yourself? Because the truth is, guys, you can have it all. Never give up. Take care.
Come on in, let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks, Ilean, for putting some of the work we're doing into a much bigger context, because that's amazing. Giving us a bigger envisioning path will make sure that the choices we make now are a little bit more meaningful. I would add one more C, which is comedy, because, oh my God, you got to have a sense of humor when you're doing this stuff, especially going through WildFit. But that's incredibly insightful. Thank you.